Hey, welcome back. So, it's been about 9 months since I started the transition to full frame. And when I say started, I mean did it immediately and just spent an exorbitant amount of money on lenses and camera equipment. And the hardest first question that you have to ask yourself is, what lens do you buy? Peter McKinnon made a video that I think is very popular where he talks about the first lenses he would recommend to people, and that is one of the videos that influenced me the most. And that is to build the Holy Trinity of lenses. So being a Sony purchaser, I thought it would be a good idea to purchase the Trinity of E-mount lenses. I have some opinions about whether that was a good idea. We have the 24-70 2.8 G Master, the 2.8 16-35 G Master. We have the 70-200 2.8 G Master with optical stabilization, or optical steady shot, Sony likes to call it. Let's talk about why you would want these lenses, and then let's talk about why you might not want these lenses or why they might not be a great place to start. So before we get started, the only thing I'm going to ask you for is a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on whether you like the video. Let me know if it helps you. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try my best to answer them. I'm going to go through more of my lenses and come up with more videos that are specifically about why you might purchase one lens over another, save you from the hassle of doing what I did and just buying them all. So let's talk about why anybody would want these lenses at all. First of all, being zoom lenses, they're extremely versatile. 16-35 goes from ultra wide to standard, 35 being a pretty common standard in filmmaking. The 24-70 covers that whole range from fairly wide to fairly telephoto, and it's really convenient if you perhaps don't know how close or far away you're going to be from the action. And then the 70-200 is specialized at telephoto photography. So if you're sports photographer, wildlife photographer, outdoors type photographer. So what's a good thing about any of these lenses? Why would you want it in the first place? Well, they're all zoom lenses, which makes them very versatile. If you don't know what you're going to be doing at the time, you don't have a stationary subject, or it's going to move around, possibly be closer or further away from you, you have that flexibility. That's why a zoom lens is good. That's why people like them. And I'd say that they're very good for event or wedding photographers type of thing. They're going to be the most versatile in run and gun environments. They have a constant 2.8 aperture all the way through. It sounds like that's not a surprising thing, but it is a surprising thing because aperture is a ratio to focal length. So when you increase your focal length, you therefore need to open the aperture further. What this gives you is nice blurry backgrounds, really soft look. It's great for photography. The G Masters have super good autofocus. They're improving the autofocus systems all the time, so these are a little dated, but still excellent. Also, all the G Masters come with a customizable focus hold button. I mean, focus hold is the default, I believe, but it's a customizable button. That's also pretty good. Additionally, they have dust and weather resistance for harsher environments. They have more aperture blades inside than average. These two have 11 blades. That's the 16-35 and 70-200, and the 24-70 with 9 blades, I believe. The value of the increased aperture blades is in having rounder bokeh balls in the background of your shot, making lights appear nicer, more spherical. That is kind of a personal taste thing, really, but a lot of people tend to go for the round thing because that looks more expensive, I assume. All the G Masters are notorious for being extremely sharp, corner to corner, all the way through the focal range. So when you buy these, you're buying that quality, you're buying that sharpness, and you're buying a high fidelity, high resolution image. And lastly, but in my opinion, a little bit controversially, 2.8 is considered good in low light. I would say it's acceptable in low light. They are good for zooms in low light. Let's get that straight. So that's the sales pitch that you'll get when you go to look at these zooms. They're great. They're excellent lenses. There truly is nothing wrong with them that I can point out as a hobbyist, enthusiast type photographer and filmmaker. There's a lot of downsides to starting with zoom lenses, and I wanted to get into those before I go too much further. The obvious downsides, maybe that's not so obvious. Let me get some more lenses. Alright, I have so many lenses rolling around on the bed, but I need it for an example. Now, what are the disadvantages of starting with these nice big f2.8 zoom lenses? For one, they're hella expensive, like really, really expensive. And yes, they are the most professional lenses you can get, and they're designed for photographers. However, if you're thinking of doing video, there's a few things that you should consider that I didn't know before I went and made this purchase. So for one, f2.8 is better for low light, but these lenses, the f2.8 versions, at least for Sony, don't come with image stabilization with the exception of the telephoto lens. Secondly, for what they do, they are far more expensive than primes. If you know what focal lengths you want, you can save money by just buying the primes. Zoom lenses are not preferable on a gimbal. You might put it at a certain focal length and be satisfied and then balance your gimbal that way. But the second you want to change it, it loses its value because you need to rebalance your gimbal. It's no longer fast and efficient. The filter size of a zoom lens is commonly bigger, especially if you go for the large 2.8 aperture lenses. Because the filter size is bigger, the filters that you need to purchase are more expensive, and that's a consideration that you might not have made before you started making these purchases, like me, and you'll end up needing the 82mm filters. Frankly, these lenses just aren't that friendly for travel compared to like the prime lenses. I tend to take them every time. These zoom lenses tend to sit in my bag more often than not, unless I think that I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And when I say sit in my bag, I mean the bag I leave at home because I store all my stuff in a bag sometimes. The last thing is that they're really heavy. The first time I took these out, I went hiking with the big Peter McKinnon nomadic pack. I had all three of these lenses in the bag and it was heavy as hell. And I was trying to walk up mountains and I was dying and I hadn't been exercising in like a year because of COVID and stuff. So let's quickly talk about the weight difference and size difference between these kinds of lenses. So here we have the 24-70 G Master coming in at 886 grams. And here we have the 40mm G lens with f2.5 aperture, which is faster than this one. And it is 173 grams. So you could have 3 or 4 lenses this size covering a range of focal lengths and still not be the weight of this one single lens. That's the trade-off. It's incredible. These little lenses are brand new. They're made to complement the A7C. I only have one of them, the 40mm, but I do intend to get the others because I think they're really convenient and the full setup can weigh under 2 kilograms altogether in a bag. I think that's incredible. I think it's really convenient as well, especially if you only want a few options and you think you can make do with what you have. Another example we have of a matchup is the 16-35 versus just the 35 on its own. If you know that you want to make, say, short films and you want to use the 35mm focal length, well, the 35 1.8 is a fraction of the cost. It's 1.8, which is more than 2 times as much light being let into the lens, and it weighs 680 grams for the 16-35, but 280 grams for the 35 on its own. So these are the kinds of drastic trade-offs in weight that we can make if we know what we need before we go. It's easy for me to say what focal lengths I like now that I've experienced the whole focal range across these 3 very expensive lenses. What's the mistake I made when purchasing these lenses? I did get an incredibly good deal when I purchased these lenses with my camera, and I only got these 2. That's the 16-35 and the 24-70. If you were listening to those numbers very carefully, you might have seen the mistake that I made. I bought 2 lenses that overlapped their focal lengths by some amount. I'm not going to calculate that right now, and left the last lens that covers 70% of the focal range between 16 and 200 on the table. What I should have done is probably bought this lens and one other lens. What does this all mean? What does it all mean? What do I recommend to you if you're just starting out and you want to pick one of these lenses or something like it? So my opinion changed from what I ultimately purchased. I think that these 2.8 lenses are good and I have no intention of getting rid of them. But if I was to do it again, I don't think I would start here knowing with 2020 hindsight exactly what I know and what I like. So all of these lenses I think have a pretty good function, a pretty unique function in their focal ranges. If you had to only pick one, I think I could categorically recommend the 24-70 G Master. It's excellent. If you don't want the G Master and you want the Zeiss variant, that's also good and possibly better if you're going for video type work, and f4 will be enough for you and you get some stabilization with it. I think that would be a really good trade-off, frankly. Plus it's lighter weight. Lots of YouTubers film just using this lens at 24mm or up to 35, say, and then the rest of the time it's great for general use photography, especially for portrait type work, or if you're doing events like weddings or birthday parties or whatever. Now, if you're vlogging and you think you want the 16 to 35, I mean, I think that's good. I think you could get away with it. The 16 is really nice for vlogging because it's ultra wide, but you can as easily get something like the Samyang 18mm or the Sony 20mm and cover yourself for vlogging at a much lower weight than this and a much lower price than this. So I would consider that, but it does cover from the wide vlogging type range or landscape photography type range to the more narrow 35mm focal length that you might use for videography or something like that. However, what I will say is that you're probably not going to have a good time putting this on a stabilizer. It's already quite heavy, so you'll need a pretty good stabilizer. And it does this extendy poo thing, you know, which I don't love when I've... it is 35 when it's fully retracted, so that's kind of nice, you know. But when you're vlogging and you have to put it out like this, it just closes that gap on you even more. So I feel like only Hercules could realistically vlog with this and have a nice time. I don't know how Peter McKinnon maintains his lanky arms, because I know that he vlogs with a lens about this big, the Canon variant, and this is what it looks like. Dang, man. That's huge, and he's got a microphone on there. That quickly adds up, you know, just holding this lens like this. And if you have like a tripod as well, you know, and you're holding it extended away from your body, it becomes a torture test. Like, I don't know how you wouldn't shake all the time if you were doing this. So would I recommend it for vlogging? It depends how tough you think you are. I think I would recommend a good prime if it was specifically for vlogging, but you know, this may be more versatile for achieving B-roll at the same time as vlogging, so it's up to you. Do what you want to do. Consider the optically stabilized version if you're going to do that, because I think that would just work better for you. And it'll be cheaper, and it'll probably have a 67mm filter thread, which will save you money. This one, certainly if you're going to do sports photography or if you're going to do wildlife photography, anything where you can't get up close, I mean, it's a pretty bum lens, and it does really nice portraits. Anything in that 70 to 135 range looks pretty bum to me. I think it's a really nice focal range. While we're talking about zooms, why don't I just throw in bonus info. The A7C zoom lens, 28 to 60 at f4 to f5.6. It's a totally nice lens. It's totally sharp. It's totally fine. I don't really like that you can't use it until you extend it out like this. It has like, tucks away when you're not using it, which is cool, and then it gets fussy and it wants to be you know, extended before you can use it. It has a really uncommonly small filter thread, so you can't really attach any filters to it. As fine as the lens is, it's quite uninspiring compared to the variety of lenses I have available to me, so I almost never use it. However, I do intend to use it to make a video, perhaps just demoing what it can do, demoing its potential. But do I recommend it? You know, frankly, I think if you know what lenses you want and you're going to get some nicer ones, you could probably live without it, but it is very convenient as a lightweight lens. If you weren't going to get it, I'd at least recommend that you pick up one of these smaller lenses that they've created at the same time or shortly after the A7C. They complement it really well. 28 to 60 seems just not wide enough to be useful and just not telephoto enough to be pretty. The 50 is alright, I guess, but it's also f4 to f5.6, so it's not especially fast, it's not especially good in low light, it's not especially versatile, but it is really lightweight, like I think 100 and something, it's like under 200 grams, I would say. Same with these, I would consider getting honestly any of these lenses. They're just a little bit faster than these 2.8 zooms that I'm talking about, and I actually think they're pretty excellent. That's all I got. I'm gonna stop right there. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, consider subscribing. Yeah, I'll be back with more stuff. Maybe more conversation about these zooms if you have questions. Be back talking more about the A7S III, the A7C, any of my prime lenses, demos of all these things. Tell me what you want to see next if you've got some ideas. Thank you for watching. See you next time.